r/ask Reddit. What's the worst crime you ever committed before you turned 10? I stole $500 and a chapstick from my dad's wallet and put it into my Darth Vader piggy bank, and he figured it out pretty quickly when he noticed the chapstick on the floor of my room. Upon looking in my piggy bank and finding the $5 100 bills, I told him it was from allowance when he never gave allowance. No, it's allowance from one of my other dads. The ones that visit mom while you're away on a business trip. I stole a game of battleships from a daycare, ship by ship and then colored peg by peg. They just thought we kept losing the pieces because we were kids. I don't know what I expected to do with all the pieces because there was no way I could steal the boards without notice. At the end, you just point out that there isn't much point to having the game boards around anymore and ask if you can have them to use as cases to keep your stuff in. You just don't tell them the stuff is the ships and pegs. And here you are acting like he still goes to that daycare. Arson was playing with matches setting a newspaper on fire. It was pretty windy and the whole newspaper started blowing around. Grabbed a cardboard refrigerator box and stomped on the fire till I thought it was out. Well, the box caught fire. The wind picked up the embers and sent them up into a tree right behind my grade school. The tree went on fire and set the next one on fire. I ran, heard the fire engines and hid in my house for the rest of the weekend. That Monday I had to line up in the schoolyard, stared at those two burnt out trees for almost 3 months before they cut them down. Mine was also totally accidental, possibly unconnected. Arson. A friend and I tried to set a hay bale on fire, but it had recently rained so the outside wouldn't take. Eventually we got part of the middle smoldering, but it still wouldn't go up like we wanted. Eventually we just left. It was slightly spitting rain, so we figured it would just put it out. The next day everyone in the small town we lived in was talking about how the big shed that was used for hay storage out the road had burnt down. People were saying the owner had done it for the insurance because his farm had gone broke. My friend and I went to different schools, but we spoke about it over the phone later. We both agreed we couldn't talk over the phone anymore because they might have bugged our phones. Mid-90s. X-Files was big at the time. It actually ruined our friendship. The guilt and stress was too much. No one ever got in trouble, and apparently the farmer did get an insurance payout. Although I can't verify that. On a positive, it did get rid of some burgeoning pyromaniac tendencies. That whole thing really have gone either way. I was walking in the hall to the bathroom in first grade, and I thought I would save time by pulling my dong out before I got to the bathroom, in front of a teacher and a cop. LOL. Reminds me of the time I was in grade 2 and I went to the washroom. After doing MG thang, I stood up and shuffled out of the stall and out of the washroom with my pants still down. I pulled them up as I walked back to class thinking I was saving time. I walked past a class and most of the students saw my butt. So did the teacher. Never talked about this until now. At the local aquarium, children under 5 were free. I was 6 but got in for free. I remember my parents lying about my age a couple times at restaurants and such and feeling really indignant about it. Every family holiday I went on, I was whatever age my parents needed me to be for the cheaper hotel price. Toward the end my brother, 16, and I, 18, were 15-year-old twins quite often. I stayed at a cinema and watched 3 movies before leaving. And thus an internet pirate was born, using his ultra superpowers to start crime and put movies online. When I was about 7 or 8, I was in a department store with my mum. As kids do, I saw something I wanted, pointed it out to my mum and she agreed I could have it. My mum then proceeded to take a while to finish her shopping and I got sick of holding onto it, so I put it in my pocket, intending to take it back out at the checkout. I had completely forgotten it was there. I didn't realize until I got home that I essentially shoplifted. I had a breakdown, thinking I was going to get arrested. Do you remember what the thing was? And did your mum find out? Nice try, Shop. Something similar for me. When I was about 9, I was at the grocery store with my aunt. It was one of those fancy grocery stores, so it had a build your own salad bar. My aunt was assembling her salad when I spotted a container full of olives. This store had little sample tables at every corner, with employees handing out little bites. I had already had a piece of cookie, a chip and a tiny bit of pizza from those tables, So, naturally when we get to the salad bar, my 9 years old brain thinks, oh cool, a huge sample table. That's when I reach into the container and grab a few. They were so good that I decided to grab a whole handful to snack on while we shop. Now I'm elbow deep in these olives and I hear my aunt yell, Willa, no, those aren't samples. This is a salad bar. You have to pay for those. And now BC of your dirty hands, they're going to have to throw everything out. I have never felt more guilty or cried so hard. Too long didn't read. It's a salad bar, not a sample bar. Terrorist. My best friend and I grabbed baseball bats and beat the shit out of a random mailbox. Turns out it was the only black family in my neighborhood too. Oh man, this going to be so cool. Accidentally commits hate crime. Hit a baseball at a car windshield and broke it. Usain bolted the duck out of the scene. But then my dad found out about it and made me fess up to the owner. The owner was a good sport and let me off the hook. My dad, however, made sure to pay him to cover the repair costs and took my allowance away for a while. Usain can run at 45 km/h. The more you know. He can speed in a school zone. My friend wanted to see a nudie magazine. Being little kids, naturally he couldn't buy one over the counter anywhere. So he prodded and talked me into stealing a dirty magazine from the local used bookstore. I had no idea where they kept the dirty magazines. My friend said in the rear of the store. I went there and saw a magazine with a large-breasted but clothed woman pictured on the cover. I grabbed it, stuffed it under my shirt and brought it to my friend. My friend complained it was the wrong magazine. It wasn't a dirty magazine, just a regular one. He wanted me to go back in there and grab a Playboy. I refused to do it a second time. Destruction of federal property. There was a park near my house that had once been a Civil War fort. We found this really cool giant piece of quartz that we decided to dig up and bring home. Turns out it was grave marker for a mass grave of Union soldiers. Oops. Do you want ghosts? Because that's how you get ghosts. Return the slab. Assault. Cut my younger half-sister's hair while she was asleep. Also my first memory is of her dad holding me down and shaving me bald as punishment for that. There was this family that lived next to my grandparents. And they moved but I guess had a small car so they would leave bags outside of the house. Pick some up and come back. Well, there was a black bag full of toys and I took it before they had a chance to come back for it. That last sentence reminds me of something. When I was younger, I lived in a trailer, but our small front yard still had awesome chests of toys. We had a swing set, a small inflatable pool, lots of things. These two bratty children would just come over and just steal our things, including my 2-year-old brother's push and scoot rideable toys, which were expensive. I'd had enough going around the neighborhood, retrieving the toys wherever these kids had decided to leave them. So I hatched a plan. One day, after changing the cat litter, I wrote with multiple colored markers on a sheet of paper toys, and I taped it to the bag and left it outside, on our porch. That night, I heard the kids shouting U-P-U-E-W, and running away. I went outside and found where they'd torn the bag open and spilled cat feces all over themselves. I was 9, and this was the funniest thing in the world for me. They didn't come back. The end. I said boobs at lunch. I'm calling the police. My sister once stole the collection plate from church as a toddler. Some will say she was too young to realize the implications of what she did, but her current gold digger attitude tends to make me disagree. What if she only gold digs 10%? 5 years old, a man lived in the apartment across the hall from us and he would always say hello and be super cool. Then one day I learned how to write my name, so I decided to scratch it into his car with a nail so everyone knew we were friends. When my mom found out I said it was some other kid with the same name, she didn't buy it. This is the kind of thing that never entirely leaves a person. That ability to have perfectly sound, in one's own head, reasoning for a thing, and then later, in the light of day, it's just not sensible at all. That's part of why I ask kids more questions. Give them more of a break than one might expect. I did this to my parents' minivan when I was your age, except I also knew how to hide it by writing it backwards. Turns out Wetum isn't that hard to decipher. Hit a kid with my sister's pogo stick. This was mid-80s, and he was the kid on the street who thought he could bully everyone, but then ran to his mum crying if anyone dared stand up to him. After a full day of his shit, I finally snapped, went to our garage and got the pogo stick. Then I walked, with purpose, and a pogo stick over my shoulder, to his house, into the garden, and twatted him with it as hard as I could. He screamed and went down, while I calmly walked away and put the pogo stick away. I became a bit of a social pariah in the neighborhood after that, but that little shit never bothered me again. I was hoping you pogoed up to him, smacked him upside the head with it, and then pogoed away like a badass. Drive-by pogo. When I was 7, my grandfather would take me to empty parking lots and teach me how to drive. When I was 9, he was in the hospital and was home for several weeks, and I would drive his car around town, running errands and picking up groceries for him. Did this for almost 3 weeks and never got caught. My grandfather also taught me how to drive when I was like 8. He used to give me money and a note to go to the store to get him smokes. My cousin and I also burned our treehouse down with said smokes. We got the belt from our grandmother and a good job and a high five from grandpa. Not a crime, but I was in year 1 at school, and being little shits, we were messing around and making a lot of noise in the lunch hall. When we were told calm down by the teacher, we all accepted it, but there was always that one kid who said, "Yeah, you're not allowed to talk in here." For some reason that pissed us off more than anything, so I take it upon myself to stand up, walk past this guy, and then without thinking say to the teacher, "Name." Made fun of my skin. As far as I knew it, I was one of 3 non-white in that school. He got suspended for 3 days. I was a little shit. When I was a young lad, I accidentally made eye contact with a girl in town. I felt so guilty I almost turned myself in. When I was a young lad, a young girl, I saw her accidentally and looked her in the eye. I stole a bunch of Pokemon cards and toys from a comic shop I used to frequent. My parents were going through money problems and fighting, so I thought if I acted out and got caught it could distract them. I got away with it and had a couple $100 and new stuff in my bedroom. That is so sad, yet actually really common. I'm in training currently in a psych program, and we have already read about quite a few case examples like this in our textbooks. The children are labeled as the problem, but in reality just trying to get some attention stop them from fighting. Opening mail that didn't belong to me, which is a federal crime. I used to take the letters addressed to the former owners of the house and pretend they were mine because it made me feel grown up to have mail to open. This is probably the most innocent felony a young person can commit. At 8 years old, my parents accused me of robbing the cookie jar. I plead not guilty, but the cookie crumbs in my room later served as damning evidence. I demand Netflix release a documentary on this case in the hope you get a second trial. Calling 911 when there was in fact no emergency. My sister did this about 15 years ago. She was 6, had just learned about 911 in school, decided to dial up and see what would happen. Well, it just so happened that my dad was in the garage smoking pot when the police came to validate the call. It wasn't his first offense and he went to jail. I worked in a toy store while in high school. We always had little kids come in and steal stuff. If we caught them walking out of the store, our manager would take them to the back of the store and take their picture and put it up on our wall of kids that stole. We told them that from now on if they ever came into our store the employees would know that they were thieves. I think about that now and think, gosh, if that happened today, the toy store would probably be sued. Also, if someone found all those photos of little kids, what would they think? Whoa, you made it to the end? You're a ducking beast. I'll cut you a deal. Smash like and subscribe for more curated content, bruh. It's free and that's a great price.